speaking of HYEFU and the result today, this is my question. It says, so here's the question, Munters. Don't care about whataboutisms aimed at Labour, because they'll go, but what about the last guys? If Willis, Luxon and the rest were not choosing to take $17 billion less based on their tax cuts and landlord benefits, would today's HYEFU been as bad? That was my question to Twitter. And then I said, come on, be honest. That was a fun question. But what are your thoughts?
Honestly, no, it would not have been as bad. What we have represented in HYEFU, this is my copy with all of my little post-its in there, and the updated the budget policy statement also, is that the government has self-inflicted an even deeper and worse recession, which has been brought about by the intentional choices that it has made to knowingly increase inequality, to lay people off, but also to punch down on beneficiaries. So, we're in a pretty sorry state of affairs, but I think it's really important for everybody to know that that's not inevitable. That is the consequence of current political choices. The double down on the tax system that IRD told us last year is actually profoundly unequal. That IRD research commissioned by David Parker, when he was Minister for Revenue, told us that the top 311 households in this country hold more wealth combined than the bottom 2.5 million New Zealanders, which is not an accident, but a consequence of a tax system which successive governments have nursed, which sees those at the top pay an effective tax rate less than half of that of the average New Zealander. And as you rightfully point out, Pat, those decisions made in the May budget for trickle-down tax cuts, which, I don't know if many people are really feeling them in their back pocket at this point in time, this far on, especially with the increases to costs for, early childhood, for public transport, for their prescription fees, and then the decaying infrastructure around us. Christopher Luxon told us that he'd been making all these hard choices, and what I see is that he was quite comfortable allowing for, capital gains for landlords at the expense of the infrastructure that everybody else relies on.
We're going to bring Craig Rennie on, and because we love being the dumbest people in the room, and we do it so well, and he'll educate us all about HYEFU, which does sound like an 80s kung fu movie to me. For some reason, it's got that vibe about it. Wouldn't be an appropriate kung fu movie today.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
It would be racially insensitive to have that as a kung fu movie today, but in the 80s, that could have been an 80s kung fu movie. Very good, Sarah. Hey, you easily fucked up. Hey, Willis. As a nutshell, though, we're not going to get into surplus for longer. The books are looking worse, and I just. When I heard or saw on the news that they were $13 billion out from what they thought, and then I realized there was $14 billion worth of tax cuts, it's one of those, if you don't laugh, you're going to cry. I did audibly laugh because, and I think I did a tweet something that said something like, who's going to tell her? They're $13 billion short. There's $14 billion in tax cuts. Who's going to tell her? And people on my Twitter, people going, I will. But isn't it just as simple as that?
Look, so getting Craig on is going to be really useful to actually unpack this in ways that make sense to regular people, because he's very, very skilled in this.
Yeah.
But yes, you are connecting the dots correctly. If those decisions had not been made around those trickle-down tax cuts, then that money could have been invested productively in our education system, in our healthcare system, in our infrastructure, and we wouldn't be relying on, the government now talking about user pays charges. And probably public-private partnerships, which we all know are going to cost us more in the long run anyway. And I think this is what really, really struck me, especially around the rhetoric that we heard from the Minister of Finance and from the Prime Minister today, is, guys, they are gearing the country up for privatization. And this is the playbook of austerity. What happens is right-wing governments come in, they starve public infrastructure and they cut back on public spending. Then they blame those public programs for failing to deliver because they've been set up to fail to deliver because they're not being adequately funded. And then they argue to privatize those things, which take those costs off of the government books, but massively increase the costs for everyday New Zealanders. We've seen it, time and time again, that the Nats have been in charge. So it's unfortunately
you missed a step though. Because normally what happens is when they're in opposition, they tell you government doesn't work, and then they get in and they break government. And then, so that's the thing. It's like, and then when they break government, they step back and they go, see, we always told you it doesn't work, when it's them that's broken it. So there's that element of fulfilling that narrative from opposition as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is just also where it just, as somebody who's very, very earnest and very, very nerdy and really tries to see good faith in the other arguments that are kind of presented in the public and the political spectrum, just for sake of trying to engage meaningfully on the arguments that are being put forward. The government is telling New Zealanders, look, it literally says in Nicola Willis's budget policy statement, the top priority here is to build a stronger, more productive economy that lifts real incomes and increases opportunities for New Zealand. Do you know what else was released today? News from another Crown Minister that the minimum wage is only going to go up by 1.5%, which is lower than the projected rate of inflation. It is the lowest increase to the minimum wage in 25 years, I think, and pretty much my entire lifetime. Then you have this point around a more productive economy. Productivity is premised upon public investment in the infrastructure that all of us rely on and investment in the likes of education. This government is making a real noise about the fact that it's cutting back on humanities investment in humanities education in particular, but also on a number of other programs that are out there. But also, we have it on the record from Treasury and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand at Finance and Expenditure Select Committee hearings, where I've directly asked them over the last few years, what is the most productive form, or could we have a more productive tax system? And they have been crystal clear that if we were to baseline implement a capital gains tax, then we could start to end the state-sanctioned casino that is our housing market, and start to maybe begin to treat that like the human right that we've always said that it actually is and signed up to international conventions upon, and then start to see some of that investment, that capital, go into the productive economy that actually employs people. But no, what is the first thing that this government did in its mini budget at the end of last year and moving into the May budget in 2024? It did those trickle-down landlord tax cuts of $2.9 billion. Make it make sense, guys.